Who everybody out there. I hope you all are safe. I hope you all are socialist distancing and doing everything that's needed. I'm very, very happy that you all have joined us this Sunday for the Africans Charged Genocide webinar. This Africans Charged Genocide webinar is kicking off our webinar tour, in which throughout the rest of the spring and the summer leading up to the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement Convention in September, we will be holding a series of webinars, including Africans Charged Genocide Working Group webinars on a variety of issues for us to talk about. We have an action-packed agenda planned for you today. My name is Dr. Michael Odom. I'm a member of the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement and the chair of its Africans Charged Genocide campaign. I would like to begin by saluting my leadership, Chairman Omali Yeshitela of the African People's Socialist Party and African Socialist International, President ColonialVirus of the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement. I would also like to salute Secretary General Luwezi Kinshasa of the African Socialist International, Dr. Aisha Fields of the All African People's Development and Empowerment Project, as well as the chair of the Black Ankh COVID-19 Commission and Chairwoman Penny Hess of the African People's Solidarity Committee. All of them will be speaking today, and I hope you really enjoy what's to come. Lastly, I'd like to give a salute to my comrade in arms, Mwambi Tangu, who will be co-hosting this event with me today. It's at this point that I would like to pass it to Comrade Asset Shakur. Comrade Asset Shakur is the president of the New York City branch of the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement. Uhuru, Comrade Asset. All right, hold on, Comrade Asset. Your sound isn't on.
Uhuru, that should be better. Okay. Uhuru, comrades, and welcome to African Charged Genocide. COVID-19 is a colonial virus and Black power is the cure. As stated before, my name is Asset Shakur. I am the local president of the New York branch of NPDM, also a member of the African People's Socialist Party, and lucky enough to be a welcome committee for today's webinar. Before I get started, I have to salute our leadership, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, founder of the Uhuru Movement and also chairman of the African People's Socialist Party. Also have to give a great salute to the international president of NPDM, President ColonialVirus Internet. So today's webinar is extremely vital, extremely important. We'll have a powerful webinar that discusses the impact of COVID-19 and colonial viruses on African and oppressed people throughout the world. This webinar will discuss the importance of our African Charged Genocide campaign as a tool, as a revolutionary aid or tool to organize for Black power. We'll also hear from an international panel of experts that will arm the people with revolutionary ammunition to charge genocide. Our featured speaker for today is Chairman Omali Yeshitela of the African People's Socialist Party. Chairman Omali will address the COVID-19 colonial issue and the long history of genocide against African people and the importance of the ACG campaign. There'll also be a panel discussion with Secretary General Luwezi Kinshasa of the African Socialist International, Dr. Aisha Fields, director of the All African People's Development and Empowerment Project, and chairwoman of Black Ankh COVID-19 Commission, and also Chairwoman Penny Hess of the African People's Solidarity Committee. So we have an action-packed webinar, very, very vital information. Stay tuned. Uhuru.
Uhuru, Comrade Asset, thank you very much for your participation. Thank you for your crucial leadership at this very important time. Now I'd like to pass it to Comrade Mwambi Tangu. Comrade Mwambi Tangu will be leading us in This Flag of Mine by Amy Jacques Garvey. And then Comrade Mwambi Tangu will give us a brief introduction of our featured speaker, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, African People's Socialist Party. So as we wait for Comrade Mwambi Tangu to come on, I implore everybody to go to africanschargedgenocide.org. Go to africanschargedgenocide.org and sign our petition. Signing our petition will allow for you to receive up-to-date information about the campaign, about our actions, about our webinars. Right now, we have over 11,000 signatures. In the last month alone, we received over 700 more signatures. Our goal is to reach 15,000 by September. So what that means is if we reach 15,000 what that means we need a little bit over 300 a month. A little bit over 300 a month, that's all we need, and we can reach our goal of 15,000 by September. As well, go to impedum.org, email us and ask us how you can get involved in the campaign as a volunteer, as a member of Impedum, how you can organize working groups. So now we'll pass it to Comrade Mwambi Tangu, who will do This Flag of Mine and introduce the chairman.
Uhuru, Uhuru, comrades, Uhuru. As Matamela stated, my name is Mwambi Tangu. I'm the local president of Impedum San Diego, as well as the international membership coordinator for International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement, and a member of the African People's Socialist Party as well in the Western region, Uhuru. And I'm going to be reading This Flag of Mine, which is composed by Amy Jacques Garvey. And I think it's important to say that Amy Jacques Garvey is Marcus Garvey's wife, and this year notes the 100-year anniversary of the red, black, and green flag, the creation of the red, black, and green flag 100 years ago this year. So with that, I want to go ahead and get started. Regardless of what is told of it, here's to this flag of mine. The red, the black, and green, hopes in its future bright Africa has seen. Here's to the red of it, great nations shall know of it in time to come. Red blood shall flow of it, historians shall write of it, great flag of mine. Here's to the black of it, for 100 millions back of it, whose destiny depends on it, the red, black, and green of it, O flag of mine. Here's to the green of it, young men shall dream of it, face shot and shells of it, waving so high. Here's to the whole of it, colors, grout, and pole of it. Please in my soul with it, regardless of what is told of it. Thank God for giving it, great flag of mine, Uhuru. And now I would like to introduce our leader from tearing down the mural, the racist mural in Florida in 1966, to building the first World Tribunal on reparations in 1982, to taking on neo-colonial puppets such as Nelson Mandela and Barack Obama. Chairman Omali has emerged hands down as the leader of the African Revolution, the leader of the Socialist Revolution worldwide. Chairman Omali is the leader of the African Socialist International, the Uhuru Movement, founder of Impedum, the chairman of the African People's Socialist Party, and the creator of this Africans Charged Genocide campaign. So with honor, I would like to introduce our chairman, our leader, the leader of the new world, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, Uhuru.
Uhuru Africa. I want to express my appreciation to you, Comrade Mwambi, for that introduction. And I'd also like to express my appreciation to Comrade President Colombaye Andernet of the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement, the organization that is responsible for leading this campaign, and to Comrade Masamela, who has a direct responsibility for the Africans Charged Genocide campaign itself. I think it is important to note or to restate the fact that it is the International People's Democratic Uhuru movement that has initiated this campaign at this critical moment in history. Right now, when the system that is responsible for the enslavement and colonization and oppression of African people and the majority of people on the planet Earth is experiencing profound crisis. And this crisis is expressing itself more sharply, with greater definition than we've seen in a long time through this COVID-19 that we in the African People's Socialist Party and the Uhuru movement characterize as a colonial virus. And I think it's also important to say that the reason we are having this campaign, that we are capable of doing this, is because for the first time in history, the African working class, that social force internationally, that has as a profound responsibility the destruction of a system of parasitism that many people characterize as capitalism, we define as colonial capitalism, because it is capitalism that came into being as a consequence of the enslavement of Africa, the colonization of African people, and the vast majority of the peoples of the world. It is a system that now is experiencing, as I mentioned earlier, a sharper, better recognized crisis than we've seen in a very long time. The entire world economy that came into existence, that was birthed, if you will, through the process of African enslavement, through the process that surrounded and came as a consequence of the forced dispersal, of the dispersal at gunpoint of Africans throughout the world, of the capture of our Africa, our national homeland, and the despoliation that Africa experiences even now, of the deprival of Africa, of the human and material resources necessary for its development. And central to that, and what we are talking about in part are essentially the forces of production, the land, the people with the capability of production on the land, the materials necessary for producing. The forces of production have been expropriated, forcibly expropriated from Africa and from African people. The human beings who were under direct colonial domination for hundreds of years, and then dispersed, that is, on the continent of Africa itself, and who were taken throughout the world, depriving Africa of our genius, of our collective resources, and placed in areas of production for Europeans and white power that came to be known as capitalism. That's the world that we occupy. That's what we're talking about. And for the longest period of time, we have fought separate battles to try and improve our lot, to change our circumstances, an exception being that brief moment when the organization of the Universal Negro and Improvement Association and African Communities League, organized by Marcus Garvey, that brief moment, except for that brief moment, we have fought these battles separately on different continents and different locations, and sometimes without even being aware of how we were struggling in these different fronts. But for the first time in history, the African people, our people, the dispersed African nation has access to its own leadership in the form of the African People's Socialist Party, the African Socialist International, which is the African People's Socialist Party on a global scale. And this has meant that the world has access to the workers of the world, the toiling masses of the world now has a potential that it's never had before of overturning a foul social system that was born of slavery and genocide and replacing that system with socialism, which is the precursor, as we know, to communism that ends the exploitation of nations by nations and people within particular social systems and what have you. And the African People's Socialist Party is the instrument through which the African working class internationally will be able, is able to carry out its mission for the total liberation of African people around the world and for the creation of a socialist revolution that's fighting on virtually every continent in the world that will the absolutely necessary international movement that combines both the revolution of the working people, African people, and the struggles for national liberation, African people, and other oppressed peoples around the world. We're capable of doing that for the first time. The African working class has achieved the power and influence and a capability that it's never had before. That capability, that power is reflected in the panel that we have involved in this discussion on today, but it's also reflected in the ability of the African working class to create an organization such as the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement that will be able to wage the national struggle, the struggle for national democracy, democratic rights that has to result in a national liberation of African people. And this International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement, NPDEM, was able to initiate this campaign revolving around the question of genocide. It's an important discussion that we have to entertain, that we have to take on. But it is a question that the African working class, for the first time in history, has an opportunity to play a role in deciding, defining, etc. As you know, I'm just looking at something here that was written to by some bourgeois entity that I found on social media. It says something about the history of the Genocide Convention that we will reference during this process. And it mentions that genocide was first recognized as a crime under international law in 1946 by the United Nations General Assembly. It was codified as an independent crime in 1948 in the 1948 Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. It's called the Genocide Convention. The convention has been ratified by 149 states as of January 2018. Now, when the genocide was coined, it was coined by a Polish Jew named Raphael Lemkin, and it was again came recognized as a crime under international law in 1946. And the definition of genocide was something that did not really take into consideration the interests of African people colonized around the world or colonized in any particular location. The fact is, in 1946, when the United Nations made this international law, all of Africa, with the nominal exception of Liberia, which was created by the United States through Africans who were enslaved in the United States and then placed in this place called Liberia, that created a capital named after James Monroe, or whatever Monroe's first name was, who was then the president of the United States, and whose currency has always been the US dollar. So it was Liberia that was supposed to be independent, and it was Ethiopia that was supposed to be independent at that time. So the only so-called independent African countries, if you will, at the time of this convention passage were Liberia and Ethiopia, and that was only nominally true, had no real power in the world. And so this international law was international law that was crafted essentially by white people, by the imperialists themselves, by the colonizers themselves, even if they were liberal imperialists, even if they were liberal colonizers, as opposed to what might be characterized as conservative colonizers or even fascist colonizers. The fact is the colonizers defined what genocide is and was, and they did it in a fashion that satisfied their own interests. And what were the interests? Among them was the need to be able to create rules regarding how wars and oppression should occur in the world among and between white people. The fact is that genocide was not intended to the definition to apply to Africans and to other peoples. For example, that's why what this conference, this campaign is capable of doing is asserting the influence, the strength, the power, the direction, the definition of the African working class itself. I'm looking at something here, and this was dealing with a thesis by Adasa Richardson, and the thesis director writes this briefly about this question. And the thesis is the case of Black Americans, genocide, the case of the Black American. And it reads, the primary purpose of this thesis was to determine whether, that is the definition of the thesis, and this is just a brief excerpt from it. The primary purpose of this thesis was to determine whether Black Americans were the targets of genocide at the hands of white Americans. In order to answer this question thoughtfully, it was necessary to first establish a definition of genocide. The growth of the field of genocide studies has resulted in numerous and sometimes contradictory definitions of genocide. Therefore, the genocidal nature of an atrocity is based solely on the definition of genocide used. In order to mitigate this definitional bias, I use three different definitions of genocide. The prototypical definition of genocide, the United Nations definition of genocide, and Raphael Lemkin's original definition of genocide. Using each definition to evaluate the genocidal nature of violence against Black Americans, I concluded that Black Americans were not the target of genocide carried out by white Americans. However, Lemkin's two-phase model of genocide suggested that Black Americans were the survivors of genocide, and the racialized violence, physical, economic, and social they experience in America is a fundamental part of American national culture, not an attempt at racial extermination. What an extraordinary amount of hogwash this is. But it speaks to the fact that somebody else has been controlling this question and this definition of genocide up until now. For example, genocide, again, is something that was defined only and accepted as international law only in 1941, and then 48, it became this convention by the United Nations. But by then, millions of African people had been murdered all over the world, had been murdered by the Europeans in Africa, had been murdered by the process of getting Africans from Africa to the various places that we were forced at gunpoint, have been murdered in all of the different locations we were transported to and from during that process. Millions and hundreds of millions of African people have died and have not been considered victims of genocide. There was no intent to include us. And if you just read from this thesis that I just quoted, you can see the truth in that. And of course, what contributes to a greater understanding of that, of course, that's true also of the Mexican people. That's true of the indigenous peoples inside this country. There's never been a real charge of genocide made against the United States, which is one of the reasons that the United States didn't even ratify this thing, this convention until the 1980s, and that was under the leadership of the U.S. President Trump of that era, Ronald Wilson Reagan. And that was because of political reasons that Reagan had in the contest that the U.S. has been making with other areas around the world. But what we see is that in 1950s, in 1951, I think it was, or thereabout, an organization called the Civil Rights Congress prepared and submitted a petition to the General Assembly of the United Nations on behalf of the Negro people in the interest of peace and democracy, charging the government of the United States of America with violation of the Charter of the United Nations and the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. Now, this Civil Rights Congress was something that was organized by a man named William Patterson. And Patterson was a founder of, he was the founder of, at least in theory, of the Civil Rights Congress. And he was a member of the Communist Party USA. So, and this Communist Party USA, and through the Civil Rights Congress was in a major contest with the NAACP, which has never involved itself in the actual interests of African people. And even it's embarrassing to say, was inept in comparison with the Civil Rights Congress, because the Civil Rights Congress did not simply rely on going to court and seeing what the courts did, as the NAACP has done historically while Africans were dying and being slaughtered. At least the Civil Rights Congress mobilized and organized people to try to defend specific cases of brutality, colonial brutality that were representative of the oppression of African people and the genocide being committed against African people, specifically inside the United States. But the fact is that the genocide that the Civil Rights Congress was involved in protesting and taking to the General Assembly of the United Nations, it doesn't exist anymore. The genocide continues to exist, and part of the reason we're having this discussion now is because the African working class has grown a capacity to pick up the mantle around this question and to give it its proper place in the struggle for the liberation of African people in the United States and around the world. Hence, Africans charge genocide. Africans charge genocide. And we see this whole struggle around the question of genocide as being a part of the struggle for the national liberation of African people around the world, for the reunification of African people around the world. And the truth of the matter is that it could not have been come about any time earlier than now. It could not have been done otherwise. Certainly the Communist Party USA or its mass organization, the Civil Rights Congress, couldn't do it, had no interest in doing, was philosophically opposed to it, had fought Marcus Garvey and every expression of actual independent African revolutionary struggle for the recapture of our own national liberation. Certainly the United Nations General Assembly, which was effectively something that was a body of that was there to reconcile differences between the imperialist powers in the world to keep the peace among them over the struggle to take the resources of the peoples of the world. It couldn't do it. The African working class was completely out of place, out of pocket. And it's only now that the African working class can assume its responsibility of leading the world to a new place, to a total overturning of a social system that's based on genocide. But who defines what genocide is? Certainly the United Nations and Lemkin couldn't do it. And certainly the Communist Party USA couldn't do it. As I mentioned, there were millions of people just in Congo alone, from 11 to 15 million Africans were slaughtered. And that didn't even register on the genocide meter, if you will, of white power and the white people. And this is one of the reasons that some Zionists have become upset and some imperialists have become upset with us when we say that the Holocaust has been used as an instrument to liquidate or obscure the historical oppression and slaughter of Black people and other people by the imperialists themselves. That capitalism, the whole social system, came into existence through the genocidal assault on Africa, on the indigenous people here. That's why you don't run in as a normal course of your day. You don't run into people who they call Indians, because many of them have been eradicated and others have been rounded up and thrust into concentration camps that they refer to as Indian reservations. So now we're talking about this question of genocide as it reflects the real world that we inhabit, that we now have a responsibility to define. We're looking at a thesis written by somebody that they're debating and talking about what really represents genocide. We're not in that debate. We're not in that discussion. That's something that, when I say we, I'm talking about the African working class. I'm talking about the ones who are more likely to be shot down in the streets of Ferguson, Missouri, the ones that they call the essential workers who work in these hospitals and who work in these supermarkets and other places, who live in the crowded shanty towns, what have you, where they talk about they're dealing with the coronavirus by social distancing and things like that, where there is no social distancing, where they say that there are these disease and illnesses that we have already, we are afflicted by, that make us most vulnerable. We are the ones who now have the ability to, through our own revolutionary advanced detachment, the African People's Socialist Party, to initiate this discussion to talk about genocide. And our definition and understanding of genocide is different from theirs. And our definition and understanding of genocide and the struggle against genocide is a struggle that would take us to our liberation and to the unification of our Africa and our people and our resources around the world. In fact, it was this assault on Africa, this dispersal of African people, that has been responsible for the preconditions that they say that make African people vulnerable to genocide. That's responsible for places all over the world, in England and Spain and in the United States, where you see the greatest number of people who are affected by the so-called COVID-19 Colonial Virus being African people. We are on the front lines of that. And that's why we say it's a colonial virus. It's not just a virus, it's a colonial virus. And that we are right there in the eye of the hurricane, because we're in the eye of everything that afflicts human beings on the planet Earth, because of white power, white people, a colonial capitalist system dominates almost every aspect of our lives. It affects us emotionally, it affects us mentally, it affects us physically, it affects us in virtually every way that is possible to be negatively affected. That happens under colonialism. If we had the power, colonialism itself would have been defined as genocide. It would have been defined as genocide, but it's not defined as genocide. And that's really an important distinction for us to make. Because the characterization of genocide as it is under the leadership of the bourgeoisie and the imperialist forces who came together at the United Nations, they are the ones who were able to endorse the theft of Palestine as a response to the so-called genocide that was committed against the Jews. So they initiated a war against a genocidal war against the Arab people in Palestine that stole their land and is responsible for them suffering horrible conditions, including concentration that makes COVID-19 more likely for them there, as opposed to the white people who stole the land and now who occupy the land and territory and control their lives with the assistance of the United Nations and various other instruments of power, state power that were organized and under the leadership of imperialist white power. So that's why we say that this is now an incredibly important moment in history, and that the African working class has assumed its full stature and is taking on the struggle to deal with the question of genocide. And so we call on people, we call on a mobilization of the African nation, of African people, of friends and allies of the African revolutionary movement to sign on to this petition that we are promoting, charging the United States with genocide, because it is a political question today, even as it was when the United Nations did it then, because the United Nations used the genocide question, the genocide charger, to convention to initiate rules and regulations about how white people and white powers should relate to each other during times of war, times of stress, etc. It didn't have anything to do. It didn't prevent the hundreds of thousands of Japanese who were murdered by the United States government in terms of atomic weapons dropped on civilians. It had nothing to do with the millions of Africans who have suffered and continue to suffer even today, who are starving, literally starving on the African continent that's filthy rich. They're talking about how there has to be an obvious intent to commit genocide against the people. How can you starve a people without intending to destroy the people? It's impossible to do that. How can you jail the people without intending to destroy the people? How can you have, as in the United States, a situation of more than 2 million people in prison, the largest prison population in the world, with more than half of them being African people in a country, a territory where they say that African constitute only 13% of the population? If that is not evidence of the fact of preventing birth within the group, as the definition of genocide speaks to. And in fact, the Genocide Convention talks about preventing births among the group, which prison is one of the, prison is birth control, killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. And that's anything from St. Louis to Houston, Texas, to Jackson, Mississippi, to our situations in the Bahamas, to all over the Caribbean, throughout Africa, everywhere we live. That's what we are talking about. Imposing measures intended to prevent birth within the group. What in the hell? That's what prison is, birth control, to limit the number of Africans. That's what part of what the whole definition of counterinsurgency is, population and resource control. And that is genocide that's committed against us. Forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. What is it when Angelique Jolie can take her white ass to Africa and just pick up black children, or any of these others who are supposedly helping us by kidnapping our babies and things like that? They're doing nice by us, and we're supposed to appreciate that. We are told we are supposed to appreciate, look at what the good white people are doing for us. So they starve us and make it impossible for us to feed our children, make it absolutely conditions for disease-ridden communities, and then they come and help us by taking the children that they are starving, that they are making ill themselves. That's genocide that we are looking at. And so they say that the area of how they speak to this question of genocide, they say is the mental element and the intent to destroy in whole or part a national, ethnical, or racial or religious group as such, and a physical element, which includes the following 5 acts enumerated exhaustively: killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group. And I've read over some of them. So they have a way of defining the law just like they do in the United States, but it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any difference, because they say this is what we say, but it doesn't apply to you Africans. It doesn't apply to the indigenous people. It doesn't apply to the Mexican people who shot down on the borders, the artificial borders created by the genocidalists in the United States. It doesn't apply to what France is doing daily on the continent of Africa, what it has done in Haiti for generations. Doesn't apply to anything that white power has done to African and colonized people, to the Arabs and the rest of that. That's why it's so significant that we take up this question and we disregard the fact that the imperialists have defined genocide in a particular way. And we say that we are defining genocide as what you've been doing to us historically. You came into existence as a part of genocide. What happened to all the indigenous people who occupied this territory before Lemkin came up with the definition of genocide? What happened to all the African people who have disappeared as a consequence of coming into contact with white people and white power and been put under white colonial domination, where a whole capitalist social system was created on our backs? That is what we are defining as genocide, and that's why this campaign is so important. So I want to just really salute you, comrades, for taking on this work, and then salute all the people who are taking out this campaign, this struggle. Get these petitions signed. Have what they represent is giving the people an ability around the world to vote on our definition of the colonial terror that's been imposed on African people, to demonstrate some solidarity with our struggle to overturn our colonial domination and to advance the struggle of the colonized people and the workers of the world to overturn a social system based on slavery and genocide. Uhuru.
Uhuru, Chairman, thank you. You, I mean, that was, you hit a line drive straight out the park for that, on that one. Thank you. All right, so now everybody, we're going to move to the second part of our presentation here. We got more than enough time since we're moving through, so that means there's going to be a whole lot of time left for question and answer. The question and answer period will be held following the panel discussion that's coming up. So everybody, please stick around. However, at this time, I would like to bring on Comrade Kwanti Tubaba. Comrade Kwanti Tubaba is the chair of Impedim's Reparations Now campaign. And Comrade Kwante is going to give us some brief announcements of other events that are taking place throughout the movement, and then we'll move into the panel discussion.
Uhuru, comrades. Yeah, as you said, I'm Kwante Tubaba. I'm the chair for the Reparations Certificate Subcommittee for Impedum. And today we have a few announcements that I want to share with you all. All right, so we have today, Sunday, May the 3rd, at from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern, we have Harriet's Daughter's Study Group Book Club. They will be discussing the former Black Panther leader Elaine Brown's book, A Taste of Power. This is an event you must register for, as it will not be live streamed. It is presented by annual African National Women's Organization. Also today, we have plant-based nutrition and cooking for children from 4 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. Eastern. This is also an event that you must register for and will be held by ABDEP, All African People's Development and Empowerment Project. On Monday, May 4th, from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern, we have Reparations in Action Weekly Radio. It's a weekly discussion hosted by APSC, African People's Solidarity Committee, and its mass organization, Uhuru Solidarity Movement. Discussing the task to bring reparations from the white world into the hands of African people. On May 5th, from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern, support and defend Uhuru Furniture, not the banks on Wall Street. Learn about Uhuru furniture and collectibles in the worldwide African independent liberated economy that they are a part of. On May 6th from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m., we have the Reparations Study Group, Parasitic Capitalist Economy Crashes. Black Workers Power is Building, a live study group and discussion of the Burning Spirit newspaper for white people who stand in solidarity with Black Power. We also have Perfect Vision, Talk Black to Me on May 4th at 3 p.m. Eastern. This live stream event is geared towards political education and Black power to get people inspired in the revolution. There's also a Western Regional Conference webinar. They say stimulation, we say reparations, fight the war with organization. That's on May 9th at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, brought to you by the African People's Socialist Party, also known as APSP. Keynote speaker will be Chairman Omali Yeshitela. African Liberation Day is scheduled to be on May 23rd. More details to come soon on the Impedum International page. We hope to continue to see you all coming to these events and support Uhuru movement. We are winning. Uhuru.
Uhuru. And I think that sort of what Chairman said, what Quante said, Comrade Quante said is essential. We are winning. We are winning. Together, we are winning. The reason why I said that that's absolutely essential is because one thing that's always stood out from the leadership of Chairman going all the way back is Chairman's stern critical analysis of the situation under parasitic capitalism, but his steadfastness towards ideas of hope, right? Hope, right? This war that we're fighting cannot be fought with some form with pessimism and mess like that, but instead a revolutionary hope. So just like the comrade said, we are winning. I'd like to implore you all, please, to go to AfricanChartGenocide.org once again and share the share the information. Also, for the people that are watching on Facebook and on Zoom, make sure you're writing your questions down. Whatever they come up, write them down into the comments, into the Q&A bar, and they will be attended to as soon as possible. So now we're going to move to, we're going to pull up Comrade Mwambi Tangu. We're also going to pull up the panelists. And we're going to move towards our panel discussion. We have an action-packed panel ahead of us right now. We have, as said before, we have Dr. Aisha Fields. Dr. Aisha Fields is the director of the All African Peoples Development and Empowerment Project. The shining example of what Amilcar Cabral called class suicide, Dr. Aisha Fields has called on all of us, myself and others who have learned these skills amidst, a very, very colonial education system, to return those skills back to the people, to the African working class. There's no better tool for you to do that than right now than the Black Ankh Project. So if you are in the healthcare industry, in the mental health industry, in the education industry, go to developmentforafrica.org. Inquire on how you can become a sustaining member, an active member, or a volunteer with the Black Ankh Project. I really would actually call upon you all to become sustaining members of all the Uhuru organizations. If you're a person like myself and, you got a whole lot of money you've been wasting on gas, give that money back to the struggle. Give that money back to the struggle. That's what I do. I give that money back to the struggle every single month. So give that money back to the struggle. Help us develop a self-determination for African people. We also have Secretary General Louise Kinshasa. I'll go further into Secretary General Louise Kinshasa's introduction later, because it's important for y'all to understand the African Socialist International, that it's been the party for the last almost 40 years. The chairman toured Europe. He's been to Africa. The goal was to unite African socialist organizations, but it was the party, the African People's Socialist Party, who took up the mantle of organizing a unified African Socialist International back in 1981. So it's crucial for us to understand that the APSP is international, and underneath the leadership of Chairman Omali Yeshitela, that the international head of the APSP, the ASI, is Louise Kinshasa. And then we have Chairwoman Penny Hess, the African People Solidarity Committee, and once again, of white North Americans. You want to know how you can get involved, how you can show principled solidarity support, join the APSC, join the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. We got this backwards way of thinking in which we tend to look and we say like, so we want the bad ones to do things, but that's the good ones. That's my friend. That's so how do you know? So you telling me you want the bad people to show more reparations and solidarity with African people, the African struggle, than this person you've had a subjective relationship with, they get a pass? That doesn't even make sense, right? That doesn't make sense. So the chair, woman Penny Hess, will be talking about white solidarity through reparations with ACG and with the liberation of African people. So let's pass it now to Comrade Mwambi Tangu, and he will begin the panel discussion. We'll ask all panelists to keep your remarks to 10 minutes, and then we will come back towards question and answer after that. But we'll begin with Dr. Aisha Fields.
Uhuru. Uhuru. Again, I'm Mwambi Tangu of the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement and the APSP. I wanted to start by fielding a question to our comrade, Dr. Aisha Fields. You're the director of APDEP and the chair of Black Ankh Commission. Can you please expand on some of the things Chairman Omali said around COVID-19 being a colonial virus and a genocidal act against African people and other colonized people? And in that expansion, just speak to how the People's War is an anti-colonial struggle for liberation. Uhuru.
Uhuru, comrade. Mwambi, I want to really appreciate that question, and I want to appreciate the opportunity to participate in this webinar, organized by the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement. And I want to thank, our chairman for providing us with the vehicle to be able to fight and to be able to win, African freedom and self-determination, to be a self-governing people. And I think that's what this discussion is really highlighting, the necessity for African people to be a self-governing people. And I want to appreciate MPDOM for leading on the question of really bringing African people, masses of African people back into active political life, because it has to be the call. What Chairman spoke about in his presentation that he just gave a moment ago should help us to understand that as African people around the world, we suffer colonial domination. That there's no aspect of our lives as African people that we have control over. We have no government anywhere around the world that works in the interests of African people. It doesn't exist. And I think that this period of COVID-19 helps us. It gives us an opportunity to be able to see that I think more clearly at any time, at least in my life, that we've had the opportunity to really see that and to grapple with the way forward. Understanding it is one thing, and the party helps us to recognize, and our theory of African nationalism helps us to understand that task is not just to explain the world, but the task is to change the world. And that's the call. That's the responsibility that we have. I think in this question of COVID-19, we hear so many people. All you have to do is turn on the television, open your local newspaper, go on the internet to see that African people are dying disproportionately, from COVID-19. They talk a lot about pre-existing conditions. That is the terminology that's used. Africans are dying because of pre-existing conditions. Well, that's true. It's not true the way they mean it, but it is true. Pre-existing condition, though, is colonialism. That is the pre-existing condition that has created the capacity for African people to be essentially slaughtered by COVID-19. So when we look at the fact that prior to COVID-19, African people in some parts of the world had life expectancies in the 30s. Okay, look at if you look at the fact that prior to COVID-19, African people in the United States have at least 10 years less life expectancy than white people. This is pre-COVID-19. You look pre-COVID-19, the high rates of infant and maternal mortality for African people everywhere, including the United States. I think some years back, APTEP had led a campaign, an infant and maternal health campaign that really was highlighting the whole crisis of infant and maternal health, not only on the continent of Africa, where sometimes that discussion is had, okay, African people are dying on the continent of Africa, but one of the things that we began to really understand and was being highlighted was that in some places, I think in particular at that time, a few years back, Wisconsin, African people in Wisconsin were dying at the same rates as African women and children in Botswana from, we look at the question of millions of African people dying every year from wholly preventable and treatable diseases. African people by the millions prior to COVID-19 dying from diarrhea. Okay, where on earth are white people dying from diarrhea? Okay, African people dying from not having access to clean water. Every minute prior to COVID-19, an African child was dying and is dying still from malaria. When was the last time you heard a white person dying from malaria? Malaria was something that killed many people in this country, but there was a campaign, there was a government that initiated a campaign to eradicate malaria so that it wouldn't continue to kill white people. African people don't have currently a government in place that will lead a campaign that will eradicate malaria. It's not necessary for people to die from malaria, but African people prior to COVID-19 were dying from malaria. Tuberculosis. Tuberculosis is something right now that is even being raised as a real concern for African people in places like South Africa that make people more susceptible to some of the issues that COVID-19 brings to your health. Tuberculosis is something, in my lifetime, I think even my grandfather had tuberculosis, but I don't know of any white person in my lifetime that had tuberculosis. I don't know where people are concerned about. When you turn on the news, you hear CNN talking about tuberculosis being something to be concerned about as it relates to COVID-19, because white people are not dying from tuberculosis. African people are dying from tuberculosis. HIV, another virus that has disproportionately impacted African people, still by the millions. And of course, the imperialists have come up with medicines that can allow us to live, to continue to pay for the medications that will allow us to live, to continue to pay for the medications that will allow us to live with HIV, not curing HIV. We look at things like heart disease, diabetes, asthma. Why do so many African people have asthma? Because we're living in homes with high levels of chemicals. We're living in homes with high levels of roaches and other rodents that create the conditions for African people to have more asthma than anybody else. And of course, COVID-19 is a disease that attacks the respiratory system. So something like asthma is something that would even put you at greater risk for dying of COVID-19. Now, so all these are things that we experienced prior to COVID-19. You know, then they talk about, okay, now, so we know colonialism is the pre-existing condition. Now we look at some of the things that we're being told that, okay, all right, you can minimize your risk. And I'm one who's been beating the drum too. Do these things to minimize your risk for COVID-19. Okay, but what are they? And what is our capacity as African people to even do that? You know, they say wash your hands for 20 seconds with liquid soap if you can, you know, very often. If you don't have clean water, where do you have the opportunity to wash your hands for 20 seconds every 5 or 10 minutes or whenever you feel the itch? How do we have that capacity to do that as African people? Okay, we told to, you know, boost our immune systems, and to the extent possible, we got to do it. We should do it. But the reality is that African people around the world, if we don't live in food deserts that were intentionally created by the capitalists to starve African people, we're living in places where we're growing food and sending it to Europe, growing food and sending it to the United States, or growing things that can't feed us to send to Europe and to the United States, while our people, you know, don't have the basic things that we would need, the healthy fruits and vegetables to be able to build our immune systems. We don't have the access to other kinds of things that other people may have that could help us boost our immune systems, the vitamins that, you know, can give us an immediate, you know, boost, or that can enhance what we might not be able to get from our foods. But Africa instead, for example, is a dumping ground for fake medicine. So even if you might have the resources to go and try to get, you know, some 5,000 milligram tablet of vitamin C that can help boost your immune system, chances are it's fake, because the capitalists dumped their bad medicine throughout Africa. This was prior to COVID-19 and it's during COVID-19. Okay, so now maybe you catch COVID-19 as an African person and you have to go because you can't manage your symptoms at home because for whatever reason, and you have to go to a hospital. Okay, Africans in the United States, what hospital are we going to go to that's going to take us seriously? How many stories have we already heard of African people going 3 and 4 and 5 times to the hospital, saying that they're having this issue, they're having that issue, only to be sent home and then die from something that maybe could have been avoided if the hospital system had taken them seriously? Or what about Africans in South America or in the Caribbean or in Africa who just don't have hospitals at all to go to, or might have something that they call a hospital, but you go to it and there's no doctor, there's no nurse, but there is somebody who said you can't come through these doors until you give me whatever the extortion fee is. So we're clear that the whole question of COVID-19 coronavirus, it is a colonial question. It's not a medical question. It's a political question that we're confronted with. It's a political struggle that we have to make to put power in the hands of the masses of African workers, the only social force capable of leading African people to freedom, the only social force capable of leading the world to freedom, to get rid of this system that not only attacks African people, but the world's people, So colonial virus, COVID-19 is genocide. And the only way that we're going to be able to overturn the genocidal colonial virus is to overturn colonialism, period. And I appreciate being a part of an organization, a movement, to have leadership, the leadership that is leading the world around this question. And we only have a short amount of time in this life, whether you live 100 years or you live 5 years. It's a blink of an eye. I can't believe I'm 43 right now. I feel like just yesterday I was 23. We have a short period of time on this earth. What are we going to do with this time? You're going to eat, sleep, and die? You're going to do things to continue to maintain this system that is built on the exploitation and oppression of the world's people? Or are you going to fight back? That's the question. How will your children remember you? How will the people remember you? Will you be remembered as a nameless face that just swept the earth here today, gone tomorrow? Or are you going to be remembered, even if it's not your name specifically? Are you going to be remembered as a part of the general tendency that took this beast down and helped make sure that the world had something worth living for? How do you want to be remembered? I appreciate being a part of this process, being under the leadership of Chairman Omali Yeshitela, and I really want to salute this particular conversation led by Africans Charged Genocide. Uhuru.
Uhuru, Dr. Aisha Fields, and you're absolutely correct. I mean, I remember being 21 as well, so we're not even going to talk about that. But you know, a shout out to the chairman, because chairman said, from what chairman said, you know, he became a vegetarian a long time ago because he did want to see Uhuru in his lifetime, right? So thank you for your leadership. Now let's go to Secretary General Luwezi Kinshasa. But before we go to Secretary General Luwezi Kinshasa, I want to give a necessary background, because like I said, we cannot underscore enough the international nature of the APSP and the ASI. And I know that there are people on this webinar right now that are watching that consider themselves proudly Africans and also proudly consider themselves socialists. I implore you all to join the African Socialist International, the ASI, become African internationalists. I was a person who for the longest united with African internationalism, but honestly not under the leadership of African internationalists, right? So I'll call for y'all to sort of come under the leadership of African internationalism, join the ASI. If you're international, find out how you can organize where you are. Go to apspuhuru.org. If you are national, like I said, join many of the different organizations and the party. You can go to apspuhuru.org. You can go to impedum.org and become a member of Impedum as well. But for Africa to be free, we need unification of African people. And so here's Luwezi Kinshasa, the Secretary General of African Socialist International, the worldwide organization of APSP parties, located in countries throughout North America, Africa, Europe, the Caribbean, fighting for the total liberation and unification of Africa and African people everywhere. Born in Kinshasa, Congo, SG Luwezi currently organizes from his base in London, England, where he has worked as a school teacher. Since the 1980s, SG Luwezi has organized African people extensively throughout Europe and Africa, where he has built the African working class-led movement for African liberation. SG Luwezi has written numerous articles and spoken extensively around the world as a result of his brilliant and dynamic presentations, which break down the basic revolutionary principles of African internationalism in such a clear way. SG Luwezi has come to be known as a mwalimu, or teacher in Swahili. He regularly writes in the Burning Spear, giving clear African internationalism analysis. He speaks multiple languages and does weekly broadcasts in English and in French. In 2012, he organized the We Are Patrice Lumumba Coalition as a part of mass democratic struggle for the revolutionary transformation of the Congo to complete the struggle for true independence, social justice, genuine economic development, and reunification of Africa. So now that I've given you this extensive introduction of Comrade Luwezi, let me pose this question to Comrade Luwezi. As a Secretary General of the ASI, how has COVID-19 impacted the African community internationally, particularly in Africa and in Europe? How has the People's War been waged by ASI forces beyond the colonial borders of the US? Why is it important for all segments of the ASI to unite with and develop the ACG campaign working groups where they are? Uhuru.
Yes, Comrade Director Matsemela, I appreciate the introduction. Thank you for that. I just also like to salute our chairman, my leader, for being there for us for many decades and making sure we understand what the meaning of rebuilding the Black Revolution in our time. And today I can see, the qualitative change that is taking place, not just inside the movement, but around the world. And it just, when you look back, you see the trajectory. So I just want to salute that chairman for that. I also like to salute all the panelists who are there. Dr. Aisha just spoke before me, and those who are going to speak after me. These the COVID-19, the colonial coronavirus. Chairman and Dr. Aisha spoke for most of the stuff I would like to say. So I'll just try to see what I can add. So it's going to be tough to find things to add. The first thing I would like to say is that the history of imperialism is a history of genocide. And when you remember that before Europe attacked Africa, assaulted Africa, I've read in a few places, Africans represented at least 30% of the world population. And today, Africa is the least populated continent. When you compare to what it used to be some 600 years ago. And when you look at the consequence of that assault, think about if Africa was not attacked. You know what the population of Africa would have been today? If we didn't die during capture of Africans in Africa, during the crossing of the sea, during the colonial slavery, during colonialism, all these deaths will occur. Can you imagine what will be the population of Africa today? Because when we talk of genocide, we have not yet centralized our history because we are not free. We have not yet documented every single assault that took place against our people. What happened to us in Brazil? What happened to us in Montserrat, all those places? What happened to us in Australia, Tasmania? In a place like Tasmania, in the Pacific Ocean, the European settlers celebrate when they kill the last African. So they brag about there is no African Day. That's in the Pacific Island, not too far from New Zealand. And when you go to New Caledonia, all those places, Africans came under severe assault. So we don't know how many of us died, how many are missing. And when you read the newspapers or you listen to the news, just think of the figure they give us every day. Between 200 and 400, depending on what newspapers you read, but it's around 200,000 Africans, babies, die every year. That's every year. Not every 10 years or every 50 years, but every year. So in 5 years, that's 1 million of children gone. Can you think, you just imagine from, in the last 20 years, how many of those children, if they didn't die, how many of them would have produced other children? What the population would have been? This is just malaria. AIDS, 40 million people dead. And out of these 40 millions, 70% at least are Africans. That takes you to 28 million Africans dead, just like that. Can you imagine how many Africans are missing because of that? The Germans, 1904, I think it was, in Namibia, they wipe out something like 100,000 Africans, just like that, because we resisted, which is the right of every colonized person to resist colonization. As a punishment, they said they had to exterminate the entire population. They are known as the Herero and the Namas. 100,000. So can you imagine now, over 100 years later, at least, how many children will have been produced, given birth to, because of those 100,000 being there? The chairman mentioned Leopold II. 10 million Africans killed in the Congo, just like that, because they want us to produce, to collect. It's not really something that belongs to them. Our own wealth. They want us to collect to rob and give it to them. And if you didn't meet the quota, you're punished. So they killed 10 million. Can you imagine what 10 million would have done in 100 years? That's a lot. And if we take it just recently, in Rwanda, French, that's 1994. So there was a war from 89 to 1994 between the US and the French, who will dominate Rwanda. 1 million Africans killed there. And without any break, 96, the same forces that moved straight to Congo, that's the United States, created another war. As a result of that, 10 million Africans dead in the Congo. That's the Coltan War, to make all these gadgets we use today, Apples, Microsoft, computers. That's their war. That's their genocide. That's Bill Gates' money, and I forgot the name of Apple guy. That's the money. So if you begin to count all these, and I haven't even named all other diseases that we have in Africa. Africa is a concentration of colonial diseases today. Every single one. Tuberculosis, Ebola, yellow fever, you name it, there are lots of them. All this taking place. And all these are part of capitalist production system. These is no illnesses or diseases outside the system, but they come with the system. They are part of the success of capitalism. Wherever there is success of capitalism, it means there's genocide with it. There is no capitalist success without genocide. It's just impossible. It's impossible. That's what we're dealing with. So we have to really make these sentences, collectivize this history of genocide of the African nation, basically, from New Zealand, Australia, to Africa, to the Americas and Europe, all these together. Because the struggle to overturn capitalism is the struggle to end genocide. And you can't end genocide if you don't acknowledge that it's occurring. It's not just it happens, but it's occurring, it's present, it's currently. And that's really fundamental. We talk about the impact of COVID-19. Dr. Isha already mentioned here, mostly Africans don't have access to tap water, let alone clean water, because a lot of our waters are contaminated. Everywhere you see a mine in Africa, it means there is a polluted water. And since Africa is rich in mineral resources, it means countless of African rivers are contaminated. And our people do not have tap water. They go to the rivers, they go to the wells. Places like what they call the Congo Basin, which means Cameroon, South Africa, Republic, Congos, all that area. Water, the groundwater is not that far. You dig like 1 meter, you touch water. So basically less than 4 feet. When you start digging, you are touching water. So the groundwater is polluted because all the work they do to extract gold and diamond and things like that. Of course, they don't show those images, but they are everywhere in Africa. Open mines everywhere in Africa, from Sierra Leone to Congo, everywhere you see that, from Ghana. So there are consequences for that. And you have food we're consuming. Imperialism has initiated a process where they want Africans on the continent to consume what is being produced in Europe. Now, just think about it. If they make fake medicine available to Africa, then they make fake food available to Africa. That's why there is an explosion of disease in Africa that we didn't have before. From prostate, hypertension, what they call non-transmissible diseases, diabetes in this explosion from North Africa to South Africa. Algeria alone, with a population of less than 40 million people, there are 5 million diabetes in Algeria alone. It's a big market for them. Africa is now becoming a market for the pharmaceutical company as well. If they don't kill you, they keep you sick and they make money while you're sick. And that's Africa today. And all this food produced by like companies like Nestle. When you leave Africa, you come to Europe, you don't buy Nestle. The Nestle you used to consume to Africa. Your friends laugh at you. They say, no, Nestle, you consume in Africa, that's black people's food made by Nestle for black people in Africa. So you couldn't find the Nestle in Europe because white people don't consume that. Oh, well, it's just the case. You just shocked, you're surprised. Then you realize these are all categories of food produced, made just for us. That's biological warfare right there. And all these things have impact basically on us. And one of the reasons basically the struggle against genocide has not taken place in Africa in particular because of neocolonialism. The struggle was never completed. Independence was granted to African petty bourgeoisie. So the Belgians granted independence, they assassinated Lumumba. So nobody ever talked about the crime of Belgium in the Congo. You go to France, to Cameroon, you go to Namibia, wherever you go, there is no platform for you to take on the colonizers' crimes because the African petty bourgeoisie has declared that the imperialism is their partner. So therefore, they cannot talk about genocide. So the struggle against genocide is a struggle of the African working class. I know there are groups, African groups talk about reparation and things like that, but the struggle to bring imperialism on trial is a struggle of the African working class. It has to be led by African working class. That's why you have here, you can see the picture of Queen Mother More. And the reason I have this one, because she attended the historical tribunal on a reparation Chairman Omali organized in 1982 in New York, in Brooklyn, New York. So that's why I have this as a background. So the point I'm trying to say, I'm so privileged, honored just to be part of this initiative NPM as organized, because only the African working class can take on the genocide. The African petty bourgeoisie can join but cannot lead it because that's not their mission. They cannot put white power on trial. They are the partners. They steal money in Africa and they give it to their partner. Keep the money I just loot from Africa. I just stole money from my own people. Can you keep it for me? How stupid that is. What kind of thief is that? You stealing money and you giving to the thief is bigger than you. Doesn't make sense. It doesn't. This is the leadership we have. So this initiative is a profound initiative, And as the chairman often said, our role is to deepen the crisis of imperialism and the struggle, against genocide. Definitely, will educate, the 1 billion or 0.5 African people basically about the white ruling class, about their history, about all the lies. Because this struggle against genocide, basically, what it does, it exposes all the lies. You will learn about all the crimes committed by the U.S. Governments on Africans and indigenous people in the U.S. through this process. You will learn about the French crimes in Africa and the Pacific Island. You will learn about the English, the British crimes, all these crimes that they don't teach in school. Nobody talks about. The white left doesn't talk about. That will be central, and the African working class will be talking about that, because we want to build a new world, and that world has to be based on justice and freedom. And when you've got freedom and power, then you can have justice, because you will be able to say, yeah, you committed the crimes, and this is your sentence after trial. So it's just so critical. So, and in terms of what's going on here or in Africa, the key parts of the People's War, like here or in South Africa, is that the governments, the neo-colonial governments, they have introduced this lockdown, but Africans have no resources. We have no space to buy food in advance. We live on day by day, day to day, basically. We work out what we're going to eat today. We don't work out what we're going to eat in 2 days or 3 days. You have to be in the petit bourgeoisie class where you can plan for a week. Just what we're going to eat today. Okay, we're trying to figure out. Day by day, that's how we live. And you bring this lockdown, it can't work. First, we don't have clean water. We don't have clean water at all. So we go somewhere to get clean water. So it does not work. So the question, firstly, is the question of food and water has to be sorted out. So what we're trying to do, what we're doing like in South Africa, we educating the African working class that we have to organize now. We have to use every space we have where we are. We have to sort out the question of food production. Wherever we can produce anything, we should do it collectively. Clear, any unwanted, herbs and things like that, so we can have a space. We can, so basically, efforts of collecting seeds and all these things is being done by the comrades in South Africa, so we can have possibility. That's one thing of going out on food. But the most fundamental question in South Africa, the comrades are saying, but if the white settlers didn't steal our land, we will not have problems with producing food in the first place. We don't have access to land. So in those shanty towns, you will have limited space where you can grow anything. So it basically is helping us to bring back the question of land. So the People's War in South Africa, the final objective is to get the land back, increase our ability to produce for ourselves. We need to be able to access land, and that's the starting point. We are not like the settlers and that's the bourgeoisie. They have space, they have mansions, they have, you name it, they can buy anything they want, but we the people can't do that. And other places, like in Senegal, other places, Congo and so on, you have the police. So in South Africa too, but you have the army forcing the people to respect the lockdown, to wear the mask. We've got images where people are being killed. The army shoot on the people because the people didn't have the mask. The neo-colonial government does not give anything to the people. They don't give masks. They don't give clean water. They don't give food. They don't give nothing. They just go on TV, make decisions. And you won't believe the figure I heard from the president of Congo. He gave $1.8 million as a fighting fund against COVID-19. $1.8 million. When his director of his cabinet has stolen, we don't even know, he's in jail now, has stolen, depending what you read the story, but at least we know in the newspapers, not less than $40 million. We have seen images, videos of his families splashing up, bundles of dollars. You haven't seen that by circulating. I can give that to you so you can look at it. It's just unbelievable. And then the president comes on TV, said, I have $1.8 million for you. It's just ridiculous. We can't accept that. But the most important thing for us is to get information to the people. And that's what one thing we're doing, like in England here. All the articles are coming out of the violence sphere is going to all our base, all our supporters. They're getting all this information. We make sure that the people understand that the COVID-19 is real, the war is real. So we want everyone to spread information, everyone to reinforce the immune system, but most important is calling on people to join the movement, because we need to have an organization that is able to go to the people and mobilize the people and win the people to our main goal. So we need to build this movement. And one way of doing that is getting information out to everybody in our base. We are every week, every day, I would say, making calls to our power base to make sure not only they know, but calling them to join, because we want to build the blank ink. We want to basically unite what ADEP has put out there, and hopefully in coming months, part of the meeting we're doing in June, we should be able to have an official launch of ADEP in Europe. And I think if we consolidate that, that will help us also to consolidate. It's a process to consolidate the European region, but at least it will give us a presence as ADEP in Europe. And this way, we can coordinate better how we're going to move at the people's war. That's one thing definitely we're doing. And also, I think it's right that we generalize the campaign against genocide everywhere. And this would depend on our abilities, basically, to relaunch like INPIDUM. In Europe, we used to have an INPIDUM, and the moment we don't. And I think that will be, I'm sure we're going to get there between now and the ASI conference we're having in September, if the lockdown is removed. But before that, we're going to have a pre-ASI conference in June. So the success of these conferences will allow us to have enough forces and also implement the strategy of the party, which is the build of INPIDUM, and that will give us access, definitely, or give us the ability to launch the campaign against genocide. So just in closing, just want to say how much I appreciate being able to be on this panel and talk on the struggle against genocide. We need to charge, all Africans should be part of charging the United States government, the British government, the French government, all these imperialist government for genocide, for crimes against Africa for over 600 years. And also, this is really key, the African petty bourgeoisie has to pay. The African petty bourgeoisie has to pay. Today, we have death squads. They are presented as governments because the African Liberation Movement, because our people don't have yet access to the African People's Socialist Party everywhere on the ground. The crimes of the African petty bourgeoisie are not fully exposed, because we still talk of Black people, generally speaking, Black president, as if they were just president without responsibility in the crimes against the African nation. Today, you have death squad, not just army, people go out to kill in a way that is beyond comprehension. I can read you just one example, then I will close there. This is coming from the mapping reports produced on the Congo by the UN. And the UN itself has an army of occupation in Haiti and the Congo and other places. But this is just one extract out of 600 and I think 17 cases the UN has put on the report. It's just one. In December, I can read you a more recent one, like last week, because it's not in this report, but this report only covers 10 years, 93 and 2003. So in December 1996, AFDL and APR. FDL is the army created by the United States government, and APR is the Rwandan Patriotic Army. There's the difference. Now, FDL, you have soldiers from Uganda, soldiers from Rwanda, soldiers from Burundi and other places, but mainly from Museveni and Kagame army. And some the soldiers came from Congo, but the leadership is under the United States ruling class. And then the generals are Museveni and Kagame. So in December 1996, FDL and APR soldiers allegedly killed several hundred refugees in the Muchiko locality after being intercepted at checkpoints set up by the soldiers. The victims were transported to the village of Mukito. The soldiers gave them food and asked them to prepare to board UNHCR. That's the institution of the UN that deals with refugees. So to board the UNCHR trucks that were supposedly waiting for them at the edge of the village. The victims were then led out of Mukito onto the road and killed with blows of sticks, hammers, and axes to their head. The soldiers encouraged the indigenous population to participate in the killings. They then forced them to bury the bodies. So this is just one paragraph. There are hundreds and hundreds of paragraphs of what's this death squad, these proxy armies. And you have the US officer, the US Army on the ground. And they have these black soldiers carrying out their programs. And these are the mining companies. Wherever they do the wars, the killings, it means they are mining interests. It's not just something happening in a, like willy-nilly in isolation. No, these killings are well-thought killings. They know what they're doing, where to go, where to kill, what to clear, what village to remove. They know it's worked out. They have all this satellite mapping for resources. So you can call it scientific killings, so to speak. So it's not like tribal stuff. No, that's how the press represents it. And this has been going on not just in Congo, Rwanda, South Sudan. I can't even tell you about South Sudan. How many Africans have been killed, starved to death, killed, blows, and things like that. That's ongoing. That's not yesterday. That's ongoing. So I just want to raise the responsibility of the African petit bourgeoisie. So we are not all black people. We are not all the same class. And our interests are just diametrically opposed, irreconcilable. You can't reconcile the interests of Kabila, Tshisekedi, Kagame, Museveni, and the people. You can't. I know people are praising Kagame, but you can't. That's really important. So I just want to show appreciation for this process. And I know victory is ours. We just have to do the work we need to do. Then victories will be ours. Over, comrade.
Uhuru Eshiluezi. So now we will go to Comrade Mwambi Tangu, who has questions for Chairwoman Penny Hess.
Uhuru. I just really wanted to appreciate Secretary General Luwezi for such a dynamic and information-filled presentation, and really bring us that information from what's going on in Africa and Europe. And so I wanted to pose this question for you, Chairwoman Penny Hess. Why Why is white solidarity with African liberation through reparations to this contemporary moment of parasitic? Why is white solidarity with African liberations through reparations essential to this contemporary moment of parasitic capitalist crisis? How should that white solidarity with the African charged genocide campaign look moving forward? And how has it looked in the past? Uhuru.
Uhuru Mwambi.
Uhuru.
Thank you very much. I really want to salute the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement and Africans Charged Genocide Committee for inviting me to speak on this. It is very much of an honor. I want to salute President Kalambayi Antoinette and also, of course, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, who is our leadership in the African People's Solidarity Committee, along with Deputy Chairman Yeshitela and Secretary General Owezi, Dr. Aisha Fields, this incredible panel. Again, it's very much of an honor to be here. And I think this is a very important question because the issue of reparations, especially and only as defined by the African People's Socialist Party, brings us to the essential questions in the world today. And I believe that the question of reparations as a revolutionary demand is the most important question. Until that is resolved, then there can be no peace on this planet. There can be no liberation of oppressed and African people. There can be no solution to the enormous contradictions that face the world today. And the African People's Solidarity Committee is the white organization that was founded by and is led by the African People's Socialist Party. And it has this specific strategic purpose of representing the voice and the interests of the African working class through the mouths of white people behind enemy lines within the colonizer population, within the white population that sits on the pedestal of the oppression of African people. And we know from the incredible and brilliant political theory of African internationalism formed by Chairman Omali Yeshitela, developed by him and by the African People's Socialist Party, and carried out in practice every single day through the party, that capitalism is parasitic. It has no benign origins. It was birthed by Europe, leaving the impoverished shores of Europe, going out to assault Africa, to turn African human beings into the first and most lucrative commodities of the capitalist system, of stealing the labor, stealing the genius, stealing the land and resources of African people, and bringing African people to the Western Hemisphere, forcibly kidnapping them to labor for free on land that was stolen from the indigenous people. And in both cases, genocide was carried out. And then all white people sit on this pedestal of the oppression of African people and oppressed and colonized peoples around the world. There wouldn't be an America, there wouldn't be a United States, there wouldn't be a European nation or capitalism itself without this assault on Africa and African people and the indigenous people and the oppressed and colonized of the entire planet. And so that reparations from white people is not charity. It's not a favor. It's not a one-time payout. It is the essential question. It is the revolutionary stand that white people can and must stay. And I want to unite with the brilliant presentation made by Chairman Omali Yeshitela. And the chairman said, colonialism itself must be defined as genocide. And that is completely clear. That is so true because colonialism cannot happen without the complete and total suppression, oppression, domination of an entire people by the colonizer nation for the benefit of the colonizer nation. And this is why, as we know and has been said, that the African People's Socialist Party has called this coronavirus a colonial virus and defined the struggle not as solely a medical problem, but predominantly a political problem that must be taken on by the African People's War. And, you know, we hear a lot of white people saying, quote, "We are in the same boat" when it comes to the colonial virus. And of course, white people are always looking for an excuse to be in the same boat, to claim that we're in the same boat as African people. But as Chairman Omali Yeshitela has said many times, yeah, we're in the same boat. We're up on the decks where the slave masters are, and African people are in the holds of the ship as enslaved African people. And that's why part of what the African People's Solidarity Committee talks about in every presentation is this fact that there's two Americas. There's the colonizer nation, which is us, and there are the colonized, which are African people, also indigenous and oppressed peoples inside the borders of the United States. And that in some cases, such as in Boston, Massachusetts, for example, white people have 31,000 times the wealth of African people. And I'm not talking about the 1%, the ruling class. I'm talking about the fact that in that city, white people, as an average middle class, have wealth and assets of about $240,000 versus $8 for the African community. And we also see these two Americas play out in the prison system, the police, the way law is executed, not just wealth, but in every aspect of the lives of Africans versus the colonizer nation, the white people. And that's been put out in terms of disease and other conditions very clearly by Secretary General Luwezi and Dr. Aisha Fields. That is so clear. That is an undeniable reality inside this country. And, you know, I want to say that, you know, first degree murder is called homicide with malice aforethought. And that equals premeditated murder. And so murder is what an individual does to another individual, but genocide takes the entire oppressor nation's complicity, unity, and action in carrying out the genocide against a whole people. Even a single army can't do that. It has to be supported and a popular stand by the colonizer population. And we've seen that with white people as individuals carrying out brutal acts of terror and murder on a mass scale that are called lynchings and other kinds of white terror against African people. We've seen the popular genocide that white people have participated in, picking up the gun and killing and raping and plundering indigenous people and oppressed peoples around the world. I unite with what the chairman is saying, that there was no word for genocide for the hundreds of years, centuries, when all of Europe, including Jews, participated in, accepted the genocide carried out against African people, as has been said, in the Congo, in Namibia, in South Africa, in Kenya, everywhere that African people were, millions and millions and millions of African people were directly wiped out, not to mention the hundreds of millions who were murdered and slaughtered during the assault and the human trade and trafficking of African people. So there was no word, there was no slogan like "we will never forget," there was no outcry, there was no word for genocide. And that today, I unite with what the chairman is saying, that Jews use the term the Holocaust for themselves. They say that they're the only ones that experienced the true genocide, and they use it as a bludgeon against the Palestinian people, but against the African people here, and against oppressed and colonized peoples around the world. And it is a tool, a token tool of imperialism. So we want to, from the African People's Solidarity Committee and the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, I want to express our deepest solidarity with this campaign this incredible petition and movement to charge the US government with genocide and make this be, make them pay, make them have consequences in the terms of reparations to African people. We are calling on people to go to africanschargedgenocide.org. We're calling on North Americans to sign the petition, go to africanschargedgenocide.org, share it, do everything that you can, be part of all the actions and other kinds of support that is called for through this incredible and dynamic campaign. I know, as you said, it's over 11,000 people on change.org who have signed this with just so much enthusiasm and beautiful statements of people around the world. So we believe and understand, under the leadership of the African Revolution and the African People's Socialist Party, that all white people owe reparations to African people. We are also charging the moneyed sector, who have control of 80 or 90% of the stolen wealth, that this is our anti-imperialist struggle. We must be the voice of the African working class, demanding revolutionary reparations from the ruling class, even as we know we ourselves owe reparations to African people. And that if we want to be part of changing the world, if we as white people see ourselves as socialists, as anti-imperialists, as anti-capitalists, then in order to make that real and true, we must stand under the leadership of the African Revolution, going back into the white community and unleashing those stolen resources, not even as a moral stand, but as what it takes to have the destruction of US imperialism and parasitic capitalism, and the ushering in of a truly liberated Africa and African people everywhere, and indigenous and oppressed and colonized peoples. Their struggle to be free is our future. That is the only future of this planet, of a planet without war, without the oppressors, without the oppressed, and in which all human beings can live, no one at the expense of anyone else. Uhuru.
Uhuru, Chairwoman Penny. And just to underscore what Chairwoman Penny is talking about, it's not just about a 1%, not just about Bill Gates versus the African working class. It's the African community in the U.S., undoubtedly the wealthiest per capita, probably African community in the whole world, sitting at the center of American imperialism, the community that's given us Shaquille O'Neal, Michael Jordan, and all this other stuff. And we see a lot of even those people like Diddy being mobilized right now. I just saw him with do a live stream with an African T-shirt, you know, talking about how all we have are ourselves, and we can't sort of be beckoned to the call of the Democratic Party. Right, it's not a coincidence that what's trickling down even to them is the campaign that the APSP, the People's War Against Colonial Virus, has initiated before any of most of these states had shelter orders in place. Any of this stuff, it was the African People's Socialist Party in the first week of March that initiated the most progressive of measures, not to limit freedoms, but to ensure the long-lasting vitality of the African nation, but including all of those guys that we know are at the top, all those women that we know at the top, you know, all the movies Sam Jackson has made. The median African income in the U.S. is $9,500. The median African wealth of the African family in the U.S. is $9,500. The median wealth of the European family, the white North American family in the U.S. is over $130,000. That is over seven times the wealth of the of African people in the U.S. So we're talking about a material contradiction in which even the quote unquote white working class stands on the pedestal of the African working class. We're not talking about hyperbole or anything like that. right? We are talking about the central material contradictions of life under parasitic capitalism. $9,500, $130,000, even as we know that there's no more per capita group that's more educated than African women. A white family makes 3 times the income of an African woman. A white family makes 3 times the income of an African woman. So that also means we ain't gonna do it on our own. So let's move to the appeals, and then we're gonna move to the question and answer section. We're running a little behind, but we got time. So let's move to the appeals. Let's bring up Comrade Tiana and the president of the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement. Now, when you talk about Uhuru swag, that's what we call Uhuru swag, Prez. You're looking great. So we're gonna the panel, we're gonna come back, but right now on screen is gonna be the Prez and Tiana. Sorry. Before that, Mads. Let's bring up Mads Ambrose to do a solidarity statement, and then Prez Kalambai.
Uhuru, I'm Mads, and I'm a member of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, which is an organization that was created by the African People's Socialist Party as a strategy to go behind enemy lines in the white community and win reparations and white solidarity with Black power. And I'm just really honored to be a part of the African Charged Genocide Committee, working under the leadership of Matsamela. And I just really want to salute this committee, this program, the outstanding presentations from the panelists, and of course, Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the African People's Socialist Party for this campaign, and all that the movement does to destroy parasitic capitalism, and for creating a place for white people, for colonizers to be a part of anti-colonial revolution by joining a Uhuru Solidarity Movement and the African People's Solidarity Committee, and working under the leadership of the African Revolution. And as Chairwoman Penny has laid out in this webinar, it is in the interest of white people to join the rest of humanity, be a part of this movement. All white people owe reparations. You know, everything that we have is because of the genocide of African and indigenous peoples and the theft of their land and resources. And reparations is what we do in USM, is we go into the white community to get the stolen wealth and return it to the African working class. And that's exactly what we do in USM and are doing with our latest campaign, Make Wall Street Pay Reparations. We are demanding that Wall Street bankers, corporate CEOs, and capitalist elite must pay reparations to the Black community inside the US and around the world for their history and ongoing profiting from the enslavement, imprisonment, and colonization of African people and the theft of their resources. So for example, the 43,000 millionaires who received a 1.7 million tax break from the CARES Act must return those resources over to the reparations to the African community. And the only progressive response to what's happening in the world right now is reparations, you know, from the white community. White people, you know, we have to sign and share the African Charged Genocide petition and understand that this is a colonial virus and it is genocide. And the genocide is happening in our name to protect our stolen wealth and loot. And, you know, it's important that we understand that, because then the only appropriate response is to pay reparation and organize for reparations. So if you're watching this and you're white and you unite with the program and you want to get involved in African Charged Genocide or the Make Wall Street Pay Reparations campaign, you can join Uhuru Solidarity Movement and get organized under the leadership of the Black working class. You can go to uhurusolidarity.org and click Become a Member. This is how you have a principled relationship to the Black community and to the rest of humanity. So sign the petition, share the petition, africanschargedgenocide.org, pay reparations in solidarity, not charity, in today's goal. Go to impedum.org/donate to pay reparations. We must support African Charged Genocide campaign because colonialism is the virus and Black power is the cure. And I want to end by saying unity through reparations. Uhuru.
Uhuru. All right, so now let's switch to Tiana and Prez Kalambai for the appeals.
Uhuru. I think it's a pause. I don't see myself on the camera, but I'm talking because I don't want it to be dead silent. Uhuru, comrade, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you guys see me good?
Yes, I can see you. Uhuru.
All right, that was so powerful. And we want to keep the fire going. So I want to first start out with some chants. And then after that, we will get into our presentation and our call. So I want to first start out with touch one, touch all. So I'm going to start, and then ColonialVirus is going to respond. So here we go. Touch one.
Touch all.
Touch
Touch
one.
Touch all. Uhuru.
Good.
Fist up. Fist up.
Fight back.
Fist up.
Fight back.
Uhuru. So I hope you at home saying fist up, fight back. You know, we just heard a dynamic panel. Let's just give it up for Chairman Omali Yeshitela, Dr. Aisha Fields, Secretary Luazy, Kashasa, and Chairwoman Penny Hess, and the chair of this amazing, much-needed campaign, African Short Genocide. So I just want to salute this presentation. Uhuru. And I really want to salute you. I want to salute you for sitting through this. My name is ColonialVirus Antoinette, and I am the international president of the International People Democratic Uhuru Movement. The movement that is responsible for this campaign, as Chairman laid out. And we work under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party that is very, very critical of what make this mass organization like no other organization in the world. You don't have options like churches. Like, this is the vehicle that is going to see us free. So I am calling on all African people, freedom-loving people, people that is sick and tired of being sick and tired of just complaining and want to do something about it. It's time to get in the kitchen, because it's time for us to get out of this toxic relationship that we have with white power. So this part of the program is the part that every single person out there that's viewing right now and later can participate. We have a goal of raising $500. But now my comrade Tiana is going to talk to you about genocide. Uhuru.
Uhuru. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Tiana Africa. I am from San Diego, California. I joined in PETM, and I also joined the African Socialist Party. Before I get into, speaking to you about genocide, I want to salute Chairman Omali Yeshitela, who has changed my life and changed many lives. He's the leader of the African nation, and he is the founder of the Uhuru movement. And through his, teachings, I have learned what it means to truly be free and what it means to fight for freedom. I also want to salute all of the panelists today. I mean, they were amazing. We are the reason why the revolution is so lit, because we don't bring it to you, we bring it to you. Okay, we want to make sure that you understand that this is genocide that is committed against, our people. And a memory comes to mind, and my great grandma, she died at 99. But before she died, like around 9, I think I went out, she lived in Tennessee. I flew out and visited her. She was about 97, 98, and she was just starting to, lose her mind. Her mind was going. And so in her last, hours, it was traumatizing to me, because she was scared. She thought that she was back in the days working and cleaning for white people. And, my grandfather, Daddy Jack, he used to clean and work for white people. And she was just scared. She kept saying, watch out for the white people. They're coming, they're coming. She died like that, and this was traumatizing. I witnessed my father, in his own garage, minding his own business, police coming to him and, just antagonizing him, provoking him, trying to get him to step out of his garage and fight them. Now, if he would have been provoked or, taken the bait, they would have beat him. They could have killed him. They could have done all kinds of things. And that's what they do. We think about Emmett Till. We think about Trayvon Martin. We think about all of those people. I have 2 boys. I think about that. I have to teach them differently than say a white person would have to teach them. I have to teach them differently when they go out, into the world. I have to teach them that, you're automatically looked at as a criminal. And this is genocide. They lock us up, they keep us locked up, and then they make us work for pennies. And those same companies that when we get out of prisons that we try to get a job with, they say, no, you're a felon, you're this, we won't hire you. But yet you were good enough to work for them when you were locked up, and they only had to, give you pennies to work. This is what they do to us. And so it's time to charge them with genocide. It's time to bring them, up for their crimes. We can't let them sweep things under the rug. I say this all the time, burn the rug. We cannot let them sweep anything up under the rug. So, I'm gonna turn over to Colin. Did you want to add anything to that? Because I am super pumped to get people.
Yes, I am too, comrade. I am too. I have been pumped. I joined the revolution like 5 years ago. I joined the International Democratic Uhuru Movement after meeting Chairman at a march in Ferguson after Mike Brown died. And like searching around and not having anybody to sum it up really helped me to know today how important it is to have theory. I know that it's organizations or it's groups you can join that might be giving away groceries and things like that. But I just want to tell you that we have to understand that this virus that Chairman was talking about is colonialism. So we cannot just fight symptoms that happen from being a colonized people. We experiencing what we experiencing because we have no power as a people. So if a virus hit in the African working class, that's one of the things that I really appreciate what I was hearing today is, in Chairman's study, he was talking about that the African working class have to see their own self. We have to see our own interests. And I remember when I met the movement, that's what I found. That's what you're talking about. Now you understand why your grandmother went, died tormented in her mind of all the torment that she had seen over the years on the plantation, picking cotton. You've seen the torment of a child that we experience all the time when our fathers get pulled over and feel less than a man when the police come and the kids have to watch this. And we can go over and talk about all the different symptoms because every person, every colonized person in the world have experienced, this kind of terror every single day. And so, the petty bourgeoisie can't lead this struggle because what they do is they come and tell the horror stories of the African working class, and then they make that be the center of our movement. But my father, your grandmother, my grandma could not be the center of the movement. Africa have to be the center of the movement. And what African people experience have to be the center of the movement. And so we have to come back and we have to come into political life, under the African People's Socialist Party leadership, so we can sit at the feet and get a line, a political line where we can sum up and understand our whole life. And so that's why it's so critical. The time is now. We don't need another coronavirus. I don't care about G5 or whatever else you want to call it, because at the end of the day, the core of the contradiction is I don't have power. You know what I'm saying? So they do things to me and I just have to sit there. Well, no longer. You can come into this organization and learn how, when we say fist up, fight back, it's not what we say, it's what we do. And so today I'm calling on you to donate. That is one way of swinging. That's, every time you donate to the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement, you keep us on the ground. You keep us coming to you live. You keep us putting out Africans towards genocide, these reparation certificates, because more than the United Nations, we know, like Chairman said, that this has to be a household word. The African working class have to be armed to the teeth saying that this is genocide. And we know when the African working class actually know who pulled the trigger last night, when the African working class know why they don't have groceries, why they don't have enough food to feed their kids, why they don't have milk for their kids, why they are self-medicating with dope in our community. Once they understand that they keep them dope down with the churches in our community, game over. So that's why this campaign is super critical for us to continue to bring it to your living room. So I'm calling on you to donate today. And I want to start off, this, and please put it in the thread, go to epidum.org and donate today. Donate today. Don't put off tomorrow what we can do today. We cannot, them are habits that we learned, as being workers. Like Chairman said, nobody run and skip going to the plantation. Like, that's not what we do. So we learn these bad habits because they're paying us pennies. But we have to overturn those bad habits and understand what it means, self-determination, holding your head up, saying that I am going to have power over my life and overturn anything that is going to keep me from liberation. So donate today. And I'm going to start off and say that I want to go ahead and donate $1 for every year that my dad lived. Because truly, from the time he was conceived in his mother's womb, before he even had me, until the day he took his last breath, that this system had beat him down as an African man. And so I want to donate $71 for $1 for each year that my dad was alive. So I want to call on other people to donate as well.
Uhuru, thank you so much. And with that, I know I want to have so much more time, but I know we don't have a lot. So I want to quickly announce, because I want to get you guys not only to donate, but to join the movement. We need your skills.
Yes.
Your skills belong to the people. And I want to announce that my children have been begging me to be an Impedum because they see mommy organizing, they see mommy working. So I want to say, come on, guys.
Hey, Uhuru!
Uhuru! Uhuru!
Both of you.
Yes.
Uhuru!
Loving Impedum. They love to read the Burning Spear. I have quizzes, pop quizzes. I teach them about all of this because we should not sugarcoat to our children. Our children are in the revolution with us. They inherit the revolution. So Uhuru, we ask that you join, get your children involved, get your family involved, and join this movement, because there is no revolution without organization. We have to have organization, and that's what white power fears. So now we're going to turn it over to—
That's what they fear.
Exactly.
Yeah, Uhuru, Black people united will never be defeated. And y'all just inspired me. So I am a Marcus Garvey level, which means that I paid $1,000 and now I'm a member of Impedum for the rest of my life, because I can't rest until the day of redemption. Like, we got to make it all the way home when Africa is free, when you free, because my freedom is tied to yours. So that's why I became a Marcus Garvey level. But I want to become a sustainer, because our sustainers are very critical and important to our work. We can't go to the government and ask them for a loan to fight them back. We want to be able to say, the pigs in my hood ain't no good. We want to be able to run political people, which we have done. We want to continue to be a part of the BIB coalition to have teaching people how to run for political seats, so we can continue to be in every space. The African working class got to be everywhere where the petty bourgeoisie have been talking and saying things in our name. No more. We have our own voice. We have our own vehicle. We have our own party. Not the Democrats, not the Republicans, and definitely not the Green Party. We have the APSP, the African People's Socialist Party. And so I'm going to, this is May. And so we are launching our May membership drive. Lawambi is our membership coordinator, and this is Malcolm X's birthday on May 19th. And so in honor of Malcolm X, I'm going to become a Malcolm X member. Because Tiana, the African working class, I believe that you can tell where your heart is by where your money is, on how you put in the work, how you carry out your action items, how you donate, how you actually fund in the movement, how are you actually doing it? Because you can say you love freedom and all these things, but what are you doing? And so I want to rededicate myself to the revolution. If I could join the party, I would. So I'm going to become a Malcolm X level, which is $21 a month. So it's $21, or you could pay $252 one time, or you could pay $21 once a month and it comes directly out your account. If you run into any kind of difficulties, you can send us an email and we can help you resolve that. But I'm calling on you today to be a Malcolm X level. We have a goal of today of getting 5 new members. So we got another member. Tiana, you going to tell us to join?
Yes, we have another new member named Kamali Sr., and he's joined us, and congratulations to joining us and answering the call, because that's what we need.
Uhuru.
Uhuru.
So that's 4 new members. We got 4 new members. We need 1 more member. So help us meet our goal. And we will definitely come back after we turn this back over to Comrade Mozzarella, the chair, that has been doing an amazing job. Really want to salute him of all his hard work, and not just Mozzarella, because one person is, and I just really think that that's what makes Chairman Omali Yeshitela a dynamic leader, is he knew that he needed an organization. He needed to clone himself and continue to pour himself into, this theory so we can make this movement. And so I want to salute everybody that's a part of African Shores Genocide, the whole committee, every seat that's on there, the secretary, the tech person that is behind the scenes, every single one of you. I just want to salute you for all the hard work that you do. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Before we end it, I just want to announce that Matsamela's family pledged $25 and Marissa pledged $100. So Uhuru. Uhuru. Yes. Okay, turn it back to you, Matsamela.
All right.
Uhuru, Matsamela. I just wanted to make a quick interjection as a membership coordinator. In the comments in the Zoom, we got a brother named Renz out here in San Diego who just joined. So I just wanted to salute Renz. We appreciate you, comrade. Welcome to the team.
All right, Uhuru, welcome.
Kicking the ruling cast ass. That's right,
Uhuru.
Uhuru, and $25 from Inyendu. So the important thing to note is that all the work that we do come from the sustained support of African people, colonized people, and white North American sustainers. If you're interested in membership, there's a comrade who is from the let's see, the indigenous peoples of British Columbia, the Wet'suwet'en nation. Please let her know if you're interested in PETA membership. We would love to have you, and salute to all the people, like I said, in Canada that are watching right now. Indeed, that is a dream of mine, to organize in the Canadian Northwest or Canadian West, but yeah.
Mozzarella, we got 1 more member that is renewing their membership out of Houston, Texas, Riverside. She just did $25 as a basic member of the
cool. H-Town, there we go. The land of the screw.
One over our goal.
Cool. Thank you. That's the land of the screw right there. Thank you. Uhuru. So let's bring all of the panelists back up. Let's bring Mwambi and Prez. You want to stay on for the panel for the Q&A?
Yeah, I can stay.
All right. So let's bring on Chairman. If any of Chairwoman Penny, Loazy, and Dr. Aisha. Let's bring them all on, and let's get into these questions. We will have the allotted time, so we're running a little bit over, but we want to give you all as much time as possible, so to get your questions answered, and we can ask them accordingly. So the first one comes from Logan Mouton, who says, how can we best prepare, organize, and defend our communities with the hurricane and storm season that is coming, which will make the U.S. South's conditions even worse during the COVID pandemic? Uhuru. Chairman, Dr. Aisha, you all want to talk about that?
Guru, yeah, I want to appreciate that question. I think that the most important thing that we can do if we really want to be prepared is to join the Uhuru movement. And I say that not flippantly, I say that quite seriously, because it's the Uhuru movement that's putting organization and programs in place to not only address the fact that we have to be prepared for natural disasters and other kind of emergencies, but is building towards a future where we can have the systems in place, as a government that will, protect and defend us, during those kind of emergency situations. I would say that APDEP has a unique responsibility within the Uhuru movement to be able to organize our people around situations that the brother was asking about in terms of the storms. Part of our response to being prepared is Project Black Ankh, which I don't think I talked about that much in my presentation. I've talked about in past presentations, but Project Black Ankh is a program of APDEP that is the African Nations Emergency Response and Preparedness Program. And it was initiated by APDEP in 2014 in response to the Ebola epidemic in Sierra Leone. And we've been reignited, in this period of COVID-19. And part of what we've been doing that I think is really important is, one thing, organizing, not only as APDEP members, but as Uhuru movement organizers, be able to go out into the community, doing various forms of community outreach, informing the community about ways that we can minimize our risk to COVID-19, things we can do to boost our immune systems, ways that we can prepare ourselves and our family, to deal with the implications of quarantine. And a part of that process has also been attempt to identify the needs that we have in our communities so that we can, essentially be the forces in our communities, not only doing outreach, but able to respond to the needs of our people concretely as it relates to COVID-19. Who needs food? Who needs medicine? Where are the extra, who has the extra rice in the neighborhood? Who has more of the Tylenol in the neighborhood? So being an organizer in the Uhuru movement has positioned us to be able to really be frontline in terms of recognizing the needs and being able to organize our communities to be able to address the needs as a community. And so not only that, but part of what we've been working on is in terms of reigniting our Project Black Ankh work is putting in place our very own African community healthcare system. That's what we're in the process of building through our telehealth program that is going to be rolled out this month, that will allow African people to have access to, African nurses, doctors, nurse practitioners, mental health professionals, and others to be able to address the healthcare needs of our people at a time when the U.S. healthcare system, or lack of healthcare system, has been totally exposed as nothing but profit-making entities. Not that there aren't individuals within those systems, within the hospital system itself, that are trying to battle this disease or provide care to people, but there's no real system in place to meet the needs of African people, or anybody really for that matter. And so in this period, Project Black Ankh is building African people's capacity to be able to do that for ourselves. And so when we look at what's coming in terms of the hurricanes, and I live in tornado area, we've been having tornado sirens last couple months, every couple weeks you hear the tornado sirens going off. And we know that that will only, be something that could be even more, is sitting on top of this whole contradiction of COVID-19, which is sitting on top of the whole colonial situation that we're confronted with as a people all the time. So really the solution is continue to build the capacity of African people to respond to what's happening to us, and to build beyond that for a future where we know that we're guaranteed the ability to deal with all these contradictions because we're self-governing. We put those systems in place. So I would really encourage Logan, if you're not a member of the Uhuru movement, if you're interested in solving that kind of question, definitely we want to invite you to join or volunteer with APDEP, and you can do that by going to developmentforafrica.org.
Uhuru.
Chairman, did you want to expand on that, or are you okay with us moving to another question?
Yeah, we can move to. I just wanted to say that I unite explicitly with everything that Comrade Aisha has just said, and I'm particularly interested in seeing the Black Ankh really build itself throughout the world, throughout the African world. And it becomes another form of organization for Africa and for our people. And it contributes to the development of our own capacity for self-government, which is extremely important. I just wanted to point out that there's been some upset expressed about China because China has assumed control of Red Cross in China. The Red Cross in China is Chinese, and it goes any place China wants it to go, performs whatever China wants it to perform. And there are many people concerned about it because it's a Chinese institution. And of course, it goes without saying, of course, that the Red Cross has historically been a European institution, where American and what have you. Now, China, as a part of its own act of sovereignty, has assumed control of Red Cross as it relates to China. We have to have Black Ankh as an instrument of African people taking care of ourselves. And it doesn't mean that we have to have the full capacity that the white people have with Red Cross or the Chinese have with Red Cross, but we have to have some capacity. And it begins the process again of organizing. In every community where we are located, there should be something representative of emergency response capacity. Training has to happen so people know how to deal with certain kinds of emergencies. We train that as a normal function of our movement. So I just wanted to say that the Black Ankh for me is just an incredibly important thing. And we just have to continue building that, and everybody should join the Black Ankh, become a part of this effort to build the Black Ankh wherever you are located in the world. If you're African, you should be building Black Ankh. And whoever you are, if you have certain expertise that you can contribute to Black Ankh, you should be doing that. And I say whoever because just like there are Black people who work for the Red Cross and other things like that to carry out the mission of white power, then we have to have anybody who wants to unite with the Black Ankh to do so and carry out the mission of Black power.
Uhuru, comrade, just real quick, I just like to give the goal. So far, right now, we raised $528, and we want to appreciate Comrade Malika out of the Midwest region. She donated $10. Comrade Fofi, she donated $20. She's the Economic Development Coordinator for EPDM. We also have, help me out if I'm missing anybody, Comrade Maz is going to renew her membership to EPDM as a sustainer at $5 a month. We have Kumba out of the Midwest that lead the Midwest unit here in St. Louis. Salute him with his donation of $20. We want to salute our leadership, Deputy Chair Omali Yeshitela. She always pick for inmates to donate. So we have a prison level. The prison level, we reach out to them. We send them the welcome letter and the Constitution, let them know that they're a member of EPDM and help them to organize behind the prisons. Like Chairman said, that these have to become, the prisons have to become revolutionary institutions. So she donated, she sponsored 4 inmates at the prison level. So that brings us to a total of $528. Thank you for helping us raise our goal and continue to donate. Uhuru.
Uhuru, and that's amazing. That's amazing. Everybody, thank you for your support. Keep supporting the revolution. What I would like to do now is they're not necessarily questions, but there are some dynamic comments that I will state, and then we can respond to the comments. So, Comrade Kwesi Yamro, does anyone know where Kwesi is from? So I can give a shout out. But Kwesi, from Philly. Okay, so Comrade Kwesi says, "Don't blink because you might miss the resistance for revolution under leadership of the APSP. United, we will win. Cause and effect, change. The only thing that remains constant in this universe, those that can adapt shall preserve. Those that cannot will merely fade away. Dialectical materialism will be my last word. Uhuru Hetepu." I'm sure I have to leave the theory to practice. He says, why can I stop listening? I'm literally on fire right now. Why are we still suffering so much? My patience is almost gone. Okay, I'm officially crying now. Let's see. Who else? We got from Comrade Diop. Uhuru, it's important to note that that Africa and many African communities have a tradition of gardening and sustenance farming even now. While we do not have to have access to vitamin C and other, while we do not have access to vitamin C and other Western medicine, we do have access to foods that have concentration of immune system nutrients such as pepper, greens, and cassava. Imperialism imposes junk food on us more so through ideological persuasion than material necessity. We must make a point of promoting the old school diet and exercise to strengthen our bodies so that we can defeat the imperialist state. Maybe Dr. Aisha, you can comment to that. Also, give a revolutionary salute to the comrades from Unión del Barrio. We just participated in their May 1st events all week long. I mean, that it's the organization for over 35 years. We've been fraternally bound. We sharpen their swords and they sharpen ours. So yeah, salute to you all. And let's build this working group here locally amongst the comrades of UDB and Impediment and the APSP. Let's see, Comrade Carl Muhammad of the Committee Against Police Brutality donated $10. Like I said, let's join this working group. And yeah, so let's go on. I mean, those are the comments that you all have heard. You all can engage those, and then if they don't come in, we'll wrap up pretty soon. But feel free to engage those comments. Even this idea of sustenance farming, other things that we can do to survive, and other sort of solidarity statements and things like that came in.
Uhuru, I want to say that I appreciate your observation, Comrade Masamela, and I really appreciate what Comrade Diop has just put forth in terms of having to grow our own food wherever we can, on whatever basis we can, and that the issue is really beyond a question of survival. The capitalist system under colonial, our people under colonial domination, we have had the capacity to produce the smallest thing that we could need to survive. And they take that away from you, then you're reliant on white power, the imperialists, to be able to survive. They come to Africa and we don't even have much of a peasantry anymore, because the United Nations come around in these trucks and they throw off bleached flour and all these other things while they deny resources to come into our communities so we can grow healthy food, etc. So now our farmers are forgetting how to farm. Instead, what we do is we wait for the blue trucks to come along, or the trucks to come along with people in the blue helmets to throw off bleached flour, that we are supposed to survive with. And in the communities where we live, what I think we should really take advantage, this is what the party is calling on, to take advantage of the fact that this crisis of imperialism means that there's a certain collapse of the economics inside this country. And then throughout the European world, the economy is tanking. And so that means that if you go to a supermarket now, you see that the shelves are bare in many instances, or you can't find much of what you want. Grow it. Let's grow it ourselves in our own community. Whatever we can grow, let's grow it. And if we can do it collectively, let's grow it. And if we can do it collectively and then sell to ourselves, let's do that. Whatever we can collectively, let's produce foods and begin to replace the role that these institutions have played. 50 years ago, in communities that I live in, there used to be African grocery stores and things like that that don't exist anymore. And so now they call it a food desert. The way you cure the so-called food desert by growing the food ourselves where we exist. And that's the ideological question that Comrade Diop is referencing, because once we are won politically to the concept of self-determination, we recognize our responsibility to take care of ourselves, and we deny the imperialists whatever resources that they continue to get from us by making us dependent on them. So I appreciate that. I think that's really important and really powerful thing that has been offered up. And I just want to also appreciate the salute that's come from Comrade Benjamin Prado from Unión de Barrio. It is a fraternal organization, and I cannot overstate the significance of this relationship as it represents the growing capacity for the African working class to defeat this social system by forming these kinds of this important alliance. And there may be, depending on the politic on both sides of this question, when we talk about things like Black Ankh, when we talk about kinds of institutions we can create, we may even be able to do a bit of cross fertilization, and where they may be able to participate in these initiatives that we create, and we participate in the initiatives they create, and we can enhance the power of each of our people and what have you. It spells an earlier death to the social system that's responsible for the oppression and exploitation of all of us. Uhuru.
Yeah, Uhuru. And if I can add, I really like being at home in the sense that I can just grab things around me, and it's hard to tell, but this is a picture of myself, my cousin, my sister, my uncle, my uncles, and my great grandma. She lived until December 2006, and she was born like 1899, give or take a year, depending on when the white colonial structure decided to acknowledge African births. But if you see behind her, she got greens and all sorts of vegetables growing in her garden. So when but she was living in a shanty home. So you ask people, where is this at? And they say, oh, that's the Caribbean, right? That's Africa. I say, no, that's South Los Angeles, 41st Street. And it says a couple things, right, about the unified conditions of African people, but also that tradition she brought with her from Louisiana that was passed down from our ancestors from Africa. Her grandmother came on a slave ship, and that's the woman who raised her. So the reason why I say that is because there's sometimes in which I realize, Comrade Diop, people even talk about this as a slave diet. And I say it seemed to be even more of a contradiction of parasitic capitalism in the imperialist stage, right? I would say that. I would say I would look at it even deeper on that level, right? So the average enslaved African had about 600, 800 calories a day to live, very genocidal conditions, working sun up to sundown on 600, 800 calories a day. That's why when you see the pictures of the Africans that are emerging on the plantations following the Civil War, they look just like, no different than the pictures you see of anybody who had endured concentration camp, genocide camps, the exact same, the ribs showing, all that stuff. So we're talking about a material contradiction of life under parasitic capitalism nowadays, right? Like you said, in which EBT hot cards, hot meals for displaced people allow them to eat at Jack in the Box, but in a place like Southeast San Diego, the grocery stores close at 9. Right, so these are material and ideological contradictions which we can overturn, and by going back to exactly what Diop talked about. So yeah, let's see if there's no more Q&A. There's another $50 donation that came in from Gabrielle Gosselin. Here in San Diego, but from Canada as well. Chairwoman Penny, I think $25 that was announced. Comrade Inyendu, $25. So thank you, everybody. If there's no more questions, we can proceed to adjournment.
Did you say Boeing? The comrade Boeing that joined last week, he donated.
Oh yeah. So comrade Jabari Bowen. There were Jabari Bowen. Kuumba asked, and then we can end it with this. Kuumba asked, can we end it with this, Chairman? Can you briefly discuss what happened with the African communities in Florida that were destroyed by white folks? I'm thinking he's talking about Rosewood, stuff like that. A case for Africans charged genocide.
Uhuru, yeah. I forgot the year that happened in Rosewood. I should remember, but it was around the same, I think, approximate timeline that I think of the Black Wall Street assault. But Rosewood, I've been to that area. Well, it's been maybe 6 or 7 years since I was last in that area. And the Africans, as you know, were chased out of there. People left fleeing for their lives, those who survived it, and the white people took the land and resources from them. And it is still today one of those sundown cities. It's a small rural area where African people do not live in significant numbers proportionately in that area, not just in Rosewood, but even in some of the surrounding communities of Rosewood in Florida. So there has not really been a meaningful recovery. And the terror that was associated with that has influenced the political direction and energy in that community. It still suffers. We were engaged in a struggle. There are some people who are in the movement today who can remember where this young African was charged with giving criminal charges because some white terrorists came to their house and to threaten them, and he sort of rendered them unconscious and was faced, serious felony charges, and it's in that same general area where that occurred. There are other struggles we had in that area of Florida, and I just can't remember the name nor the year, though there are, I believe, people who are in the party and in our movement who know the time that I'm talking about that this occurred. So Rosewood was real, and as I said, it continues to be essentially a sundown city. It's not characterized as a sundown city, but you don't find many Africans living there. But for that matter, so is what is that city in Oregon where Maz in Oregon? Is he in Portland?
Yeah, Portland.
Yeah, I mean, so is Portland, Oregon, a sundown city. I mean, I went to Portland on an airplane, and from the moment I got on the plane to the destination where the event was characterized, I only saw 17 Africans. and that's through the airport and every place. That's what we confronted with. There are a lot of Rosewoods that exist in this country today, and that go unspoken, which makes it absolutely ridiculous that white people and the oppressors have control of the definition of what genocide is.
Can I add something to that to you, Comrade? I'm sorry, Chairman, from your teachings, which I think is so crucial. I think two things, right? First and foremost, that in my belief, right, it's not a coincidence in that spirit, that revolutionary spirit for self-determination of African people, that the burning spear, the guiding light of African people in the U.S. emerged from St. Petersburg, Florida. Right, there was Eatonville, there was Rosewood, there was all these other places that were lessons of African self-determination, which go all the shoot back. You could take that back to the Maroon colonies, the people who led the assault against slavery in South Carolina, Jimmy and those guys, going all the way back to the early 1700s to the Black Seminoles. So I think that sort of it's not a coincidence, but I think sort of we also have to, like, following the teachings of the chairman, still sort of an understanding that reject, what was called in the 1980s neo-Zionist, we can call it New Africanist ideology, which looks at that tradition and then tries to make that tradition only about us here in the U.S. Yes, that's the genius of the African working class, but that's the same genius that we see Africans all throughout the U.S. All throughout the world are resisting imperialism, and an African nation will not be built on top of sort of and alongside the sort of white settler colonial fantasies and blackface. California, Oregon, all these places out here, Seattle, Washington, British Columbia, Alberta, all this whole Western area, stripped violently from indigenous people. And shoot, sundown towns. These were sundown states, right? That they called free soil states. Sure. They barred Africans, and they barred slavery and Africans, right? Yeah. So we can say that's like uber.
That's redundant. They barred both of them as redundant. to bar Africans is to bar slavery.
Exactly. Which is, we're talking uber white nationalism. Yeah.
I don't want to belabor this. But I just want to appreciate that you mentioned the burning spear, and one of the struggles that I was just talking to you about that we were engaged in near Rosewood. We got involved in it because a person who I'd known a long time ago, I knew her father. And she found a copy of the burning spear when this attack happened on this young African who by a white man who was the son of a wealthy, influential white landowner, something to that effect. And she found a copy of the burning spear and the phone number in that burning spear. And that's how she was able to call us and say, help, and how we ended up being in that particular struggle. And like I said, that was right in that same general community of Rosewood. So the terror exists. Uhuru.
Sorry, Mozzarella, before you end it,
cool, thank you,
before you end it, it's very important because I really want to salute people that joined because, we say we have to have a to what end. So we had 2 more memberships that came through. And Tiana, if you're there, because I don't want to slaughter his name, but he became a Marcus Garvey level. So I just really want to salute our new member that became a Marcus Garvey level.
That's our brother Renz out here in San Diego.
Right on.
Right on, Renz.
Became a Marcus Garvey level. And then we also got a new membership out of St. Louis, Missouri. So we want to salute Christina. She became a member. She paid $25. So I want to salute her as well. And I think it's one more, Joseph, out of Canada.
Nashambi Joseph. Hey, Uhuru Nashambi.
Yeah, out of Canada. Became a member as well. So
that's great. That's great. Yeah, Nashambi's family come from a long line of African freedom fighters. So welcome to the movement, Nashambi. that's dope. All right.
We are winning.
And then we are winning. And then Maureen, Stephanie, Janice, Janice, sorry, all dedicated $25. So as we close out, what does that make our grand total at least as of now?
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Well, we got the $1,000 from the Marcus Garvey level when we was at 593. and 25. Give me a minute. If I ain't know how to do nothing else in school, I know how to count money.
That's 618. So 16,
Yep.
18.
Yep.
What?
16,
Yeah,
18.
what?
Oh,
Yeah.
it's 1618. $1,116. $18.
Wow. Uhuru. Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing.
1,100.
Girl.
600. If it's 16, 18, is that what I heard? 16?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, 1,600. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman.
All right. All
I
right.
said it wrong.
So on that note, I want to salute again everybody. Please once again go to the petition, circulate the petition. Go to impedum.org. Join. Find out how we can organize working groups where you are. And the whole point is to sort of internationalize our struggles. So the ACG working group in the Northwest might be focusing on something different than the border, but we're all struggling to overturn colonialist capitalism, parasitic capitalism, and the oppression of colonized people. So yeah. So thank you to all the participants on Zoom. Thank you to all the participants who will continually watch this video on all the participants who will continually watch this video on Facebook. The video has been shared over 200 times. So that is an excellent start. So yeah. Thank you. Stay tuned. If you're going over to the annual study group, please do that. If you're please do that. Please enjoy it, as well as the ABDEP events and all the other events that we have coming on. This Friday, we're going to have another Burning Spear study group. It's going to be live on the Impedum channel. Next Sunday, tune into Omali Taught Me every Sunday, 5 a.m. Pacific, 8 a.m. Eastern time. So salute to everybody. Uhuru. Thank you.
Uhuru.
Uhuru. Vanguard up.
Uhuru.
Izweletu.
Vanguard up.
Yeah.
E Africa.
E Africa.
Too.
Izwele too.
Izwele too.
Uhuru.
Uhuru.